Hi. And you don't look very comfy. Is that the most comfortable way you could think of to keep an eye on me? He knows there's treats out. He's waiting for them. He's got to watch me until they arrive. He smush him face. I see BBAB in the viewer list. Oh, sleepy. It's Friday. It's November. October has come and gone. Last 2 months of 2022. Here we are. Hi, Sharkies. Congratulations on making it through another week. How are you doing? How is Friday treating you? A wet week, right? We found a portion of today where it wasn't raining too heavily, where we snuck this guy around the block. And we had some nice hot pho for dinner. Soup, noodle soup. He does have a puppy raincoat. Look at him perk up because I leaned forward. He's got a bright green puppy raincoat. The hood, it's got a little hood, which does not entirely fit over his head, but it sort of sits above it. I don't think it's the most comfortable thing to wear for him to wear, but he endures it if it means getting to venture outdoors. He gets so excited. He doesn't. We take his collar off when he's inside, and so when we grab his collar, he knows that means that something's happening, that he's leaving the house, and he gets so excited. It's a whole process just putting his collar on because he's got to like bite it and chew on it, and then eventually he puts it, his chin over it. Mm. Does Stormy go out much? Do you take does Stormy have a leash? Or is Stormy entirely an indoors kitty? Yeah, that is kind of the sort of thing that needs to be early and often for kitties to get used to. You need to build habits and familiarity. That would make things trickier, yeah. I have never lived higher than the third floor of an apartment. I've never had an apartment higher than the third floor. For a while, my brother and his family were living on, I think, the 12th floor of an apartment. And then their apartment started needing to do repairs on the elevator. So their single elevator was going to be like out of service for like 6 months. Which meant that any time they wanted to leave the apartment or, needed to for whatever reason, they had to take the stairs all the way from the 12th floor. I can't imagine how brutal groceries were. Oh, yeah. I had, I think, a third floor apartment when I lived in Chilliwack. I think our Langley apartment was on the second or third floor, which you visited, with our ill thought out rehearsal that one evening. Who knew that yelling fire in an apartment building repeatedly was a bad idea? uh, as soon as someone knocked on the door, it was just like, oh, oh, this was not a good idea. Where we watched Sharks in Venice. That makes sense, yeah. That apartment was nothing but traps. I remember very little from that movie. Basically, that line and like one shot of the sharks in a canal, and that's, I think, all I remember. Oh boy. And the repeated footage during fight scenes, I don't remember that. So we read the first issue of Ninja Turtles on Wednesday. That was fun. Not something that I want to do super frequently, but it was fun. Thermite grenade. Oh, sleepy puppy. Benedict has been very sleepy today. Curled up in the corner on the couch, and I tucked him in with a blanket, and he pretty much slept there most of the day. I'm grabbing the book this time, Ben, but I guess I can also grab a treat. Twice, like, it's good that you're chewing, but you should still probably chew more than twice. Crunch, crunch, gulp. Feels like this is aimed very high. So, we've got less than 100 pages to go. What? You were gonna leave and then I leaned forward to put down my bookmark and now you're wondering whether you should stay? I do have 2 treats out still. I do have 1 treat out still. That was better. So a week ago, when we read this last, we had lots of volunteers showing up for the watch for some reason, including a vampire whom Carrot turned away, or told Sergeant Colin to turn away. Angua's clothes got stolen. And then later, Angua and Carrot spent some personal time together. And then even later, some moonlight fell on Angua while she was sleeping, and Carrot reacted poorly before he'd figured things out. So she's on the run. Gaspode's trying to track her down. I'm gonna sneeze. Vampire sneeze. Excuse me. Thank you. Cuddy built a little cooling fan helmet for Detritus, which is very cute. Maybe it might be a little effective. I don't think it's very effective, but so far it might be helping a little. Detritus has been going somewhat mad with power after recruiting anyone in sight. And it is wedding day for Captain Vimes. And that's about where we're at. Also, Nobby has been sent off on a special errand, apparently. And yeah, I think we might be about to find out about Nobby's special errand on the very bottom of page 322 is where we're at. So why don't we get into it? Corporal Nobbs toiled through the darkness under the city. His eyes had got accustomed to the gloom now. He was dying for a smoke, but Carrot had warned him about that. Just take the sack, follow the trail, bring back the body. And don't nick any jewelry. People were already filing into the great hall of Unseen University. Vimes had been firm about this. It was the only thing he'd held out for. He wasn't exactly an atheist, because atheism was a non-survival trait on a world with several thousand gods. He just didn't like them very much, and didn't see what business it was of theirs that he was getting married. He'd turned down any of the temples and churches, but the Great Hall had a sufficiently churchy look which is what people always feel is mandatory on these occasions. It's not actually essential for any gods to drop in, but they should feel at home if they do. Vimes strolled down there early, because there's nothing more useless in the world than a groom just before the wedding. Interchangeable Emmas had taken over the house. There were already a couple of ushers in place, ready to ask guests whose side they were on. And there were a number of senior wizards hanging around. They were automatically guests at such a society wedding, and certainly at the reception afterwards. Probably one roast ox wouldn't be enough. Despite his deep distrust of magic, he quite liked the wizards. They didn't cause trouble. At least, they didn't cause his kind of trouble. True, occasionally they fractured the space-time continuum, or took the canoe of reality too close to the white waters of chaos, but they never broke the actual law. "Good morning, Arch-Chancellor," he said. Arch-Chancellor Mustrum Ridcully, supreme leader of all the wizards in Ankh-Morpork, whenever they could be bothered, gave him a cheery nod. I think this is the first time that we have encountered the Arch-Chancellor. He's in the first book that Granny Weatherwax shows up in, Equal Rights, which we kind of skipped. And I don't think he's made an appearance in either of the other Discworld books we've read. Asking whose side they were on makes it sound like a battlefield. Yeah. Yeah, it does. It's a weird tradition, isn't it? Dividing the guests at a wedding. I don't know. Like, kind of makes the wedding feel a little bit like a popularity contest or something. Which, is a weird way to start a marriage. Excuse me. So, Arch-Chancellor Mustrum Ridcully gave him a cheery nod. "Good morning, Captain," he said. "I must say, you've got a nice day for it." "Ha ha ha, a nice day for it," leered the bursar. "Oh dear," said Ridcully. "He's off again. Can't understand the man. Anyone got the dried frog pills?" It was a complete mystery to Mustrum Ridcully, a man designed by nature to live outdoors and happily slaughter anything that coughed in the bushes, why the bursar, a man designed by nature to sit in a small room somewhere adding up figures, was so nervous. He tried all sorts of things to, as he put it, buck him up. These included practical jokes, surprise early morning runs, and leaping out at him from behind doors while wearing Willy the Vampire masks, in order, he said, to take him out of himself. The service itself was going to be performed by the Dean, who had carefully made one up. There was no official civil marriage service in Ankh-Morpork, other than something approximating to, "Oh, all right then, if you really must." He nodded enthusiastically at Vimes. "We've cleaned our organ especially for the occasion," he said. "Ha ha ha, organ," said the bursar. Oh, that's cute.
And a mighty one it is, as organs go.
Ridcully stopped and signaled to a couple of student wizards.
Just take the bursar away and make him lie down for a while, will you? He said. I think someone's been feeding him meat again.
There was a hiss from the far end of the great hall, and then a strangled squeak. Vimes stared at the monstrous array of pipes.
Got 8 students pumping the bellows,
said Ridcully, to a background of wheezes.
It's got 3 keyboards and 100 extra knobs, including 12 with question marks on them. Sounds impossible for a man to play, said Vimes politely. Ah, we had a stroke of luck there.
There was a moment of sound so loud that the aural nerves shut down. When they opened again, somewhere around the pain threshold, they could just make out the opening and extremely bent bars of Fondel's Wedding March. Fondel. Fondel. Wedding March, being played with gusto by someone who'd discovered that the instrument didn't just have 3 keyboards, but a whole range of special acoustic effects, ranging from flatulence to humorous chicken squawk. The occasional ook of appreciation could be heard amidst the sonic explosion. Somewhere under the table, Vimes screamed at Ridcully, "Amazing! Who built it?" Not even a question mark, just exclamation marks there.
I don't know, but it's got the name B.S. Johnson on the keyboard cover.
A lot of that in this book. There was a descending wail, one last hurdy-gurdy effect, and then silence. When I sneezed there, I plugged up my nose.
"20 minutes those lads were pumping up the reservoirs,"
excuse me, said Ridcully, dusting him off as he stood up.
"Go easy on the Vox Day stop. There's a good chap."
Ook. I'm guessing there's a music joke in there that I don't understand. The Arch-Chancellor turned back to Vimes, who was wearing the standard waxen nuptial? That's one of those words that I know I've heard, but now I'm like, nuptial, I think. Nuptial. Prenuptial. Chew? Is it two or chew? Nuptial? Nuptial. Or nuptial. What a weird word. The standard waxen prenuptial grimace. The hall was filling up quite well now. Nup. Who's speaking here? I'll try and sort this out. I think we're starting, with the Dean.
I'm not an expert on this stuff, he said, but you've got the ring, have you? Yes. Who's giving away the bride? Her Uncle Lofthouse. He's a bit gaga, but she insisted. And the best man? What? The best man. You know, he hands you the ring and has to marry the bride if you run away and so on. Oh, what? I feel like there's a third person talking here and I don't know who it is because this says, the Dean's been reading up on it, haven't you, Dean? Who's this third person? The Arch-Chancellor. Wait, the Arch-Chancellor and the Dean are separate people. I was getting those mixed up. I was just reading them both as one person. My mistake. So, that was the Arch-Chancellor speaking through that. The best man. The Dean's been reading up on it, haven't you, Dean? Oh, yes, said the Dean, who'd spent all the previous day with Lady Deirdre Wagon's Book of Etiquette. She's got to marry someone once she's turned up. You can't have unmarried brides flapping around the place, being a danger to society. I completely forgot about a best man, said Vimes. The librarian, who'd given up on the organ until it had some more puff, brightened up. Ook? Well, go and find one, said Ridcully. You've got nearly half an hour. It's not as easy as that, is it? They don't grow on trees. Ook? I can't think who to ask. Ook. The librarian liked being best man. You were allowed to kiss bridesmaids, and they weren't allowed to run away. He was really disappointed when Vimes ignored him. Acting Constable Cuddy climbed laboriously up the steps inside the Tower of Art, grumbling to himself. He knew he couldn't complain. They'd drawn lots because, Carrot said, you shouldn't ask the men to do anything you wouldn't do yourself. And he'd drawn the short straw, har, which meant the tallest building. That meant if there was any trouble, he'd miss it. He paid no attention to the thin rope dangling from the trapdoor far above. Even if he'd thought about it, so what? It was just a rope. Gaspode looked up into the shadows. There was a growl from somewhere in the darkness. It was no ordinary dog growl. Early man had heard sounds like that in deep caves. Gaspode sat down. His tail thumped uncertainly. Knew I'd find you sooner or later, he said. The old nose, eh? Finest instrument known to dog. There was another growl. Gaspode whimpered a bit. The thing is, he said, the actual thing is, see? The thing what I've been sent to do. Late man heard sounds like that too, just before he became late. I can see you don't want to talk right now, said Gaspode. But the thing is, now I know what you're thinking. Is this Gaspode obeying orders from a human? Gaspode looked conspiratorially over his shoulder, as if there could be anything worse than what was in front of him. That's the whole mess about being a dog, see? He said. That's the thing what Big Fido can't get his mind around, see? You looked at the dogs in the guild, right? You heard 'em howl. Oh, yes, death to the humans, all right. But under all that, there's the fear. There's the voice saying, bad dog. And it don't come from anywhere but inside, right from inside the bones. 'Cause humans made dogs. I knows this. I wish I didn't, but there it is. That's the power, knowin'. I've read books, I have. Well, chewed books.
The darkness was silent.
And you're a wolf and human at the same time, right? Tricky, that. I can see that. Bit of a dichotomy sort of thing. Makes you kind of like a dog. 'Cause that's what a dog is, really. Half a wolf and half a human. You were right about that. We've even got names. Ha! So, our bodies tell us one thing, our heads tell us another. It's a dog's life, being a dog. And I bet you can't run away from him.
Here's an uncomfortable line coming up.
Not really. He's your master.
Blah. The darkness was more silent. Gaspode thought he heard movement.
He wants you to come back. The thing is, if he finds you, that's it. He'll speak, and you'll have to obey. But if you goes back of your own accord, then it's your decision. You'd be happier as a human. I mean, what can I offer you except rats and a choice of fleas? I mean, I don't know. I don't see it as much of a problem. You just have to stay indoors 6 or 7 nights every month.
Angua howled. The hairs that still remained on Gaspode's back stood on end. He tried to remember which was his jugular vein.
I don't want to have to come in there and get you,
he said. Truth rang on every word.
The thing is, the actual thing is, I will, though,
he added, trembling.
It's a bugger being a dog.
He thought some more and sighed.
Oh, I remember. It's the one in the throat,
he said. Just remember, Gaspode is a dog and thinks like a dog. But, yeah, some of those lines there are a little questionable. Also, take it from me, dogs can be very good at not listening. Vimes stepped out into the sunlight, except that there wasn't much of it. Clouds were blowing in from the hub, and
Detritus?
dink.
Captain Vimes, sir! Who are all these people? Watchman, sir.
Vimes stared in puzzlement at the half-dozen assorted guards.
Who are you? Lance Constable Rolf Pyjama, sir. And you, Coalface? I never done nothing. I never done nothing, sir,
yelled Detritus.
Coalface? In the watch?
Dink.
Corporal Carrot says there's some good buried somewhere in everyone,
said Detritus.
And what's your job, Detritus?
Dink.
Engineer in charge of deep mining operations, sir. Vimes scratched his head. That was very nearly a joke, wasn't it? He said. This new helmet my mate Cuddy made me, sir. Ha! People can't say, there go stupid troll. They have to say, who that good-looking military troll there? Acting constable already. Great future behind him. He got destiny written all over him like writing.
Vimes digested this. Detritus beamed at him. Now, I'm wondering... I don't know if it's going to get explained in this book. To trolls, I don't remember the reasoning behind it. My mate Cuddy, yeah. I don't remember the reasoning behind it, but to trolls, the future is behind them, and I think the past is ahead. And I'm sure there was some footnote somewhere, or maybe there still will be, but I didn't see one in the next few pages, explaining why it is that way. I don't remember off the top of my head why that is. But as Detritus said there, bright future behind him. Because you can see the past?
Great future behind him. He got destiny written all over him like writing.
Vimes digested this. Detritus beamed at him.
And where is Sergeant Colin? Here, Captain Vimes. I need a best man, Fred. Right, sir. I'll get Corporal Carrot. He's just checking the roofs. Fred, I've known you more than 20 years. Good grief, all you have to do is stand there. Fred, you're good at that.
Carrot appeared at the trot.
Sorry I'm late, Captain Vimes. We really wanted this to be a surprise. What? What sort of surprise?
Carrot fished in his pouch.
Well, Captain, on behalf of the watch, that is, most of the watch. Hold on a minute, said Colin. Here comes his lordship.
The clop of hooves and the rattle of harness signaled the approach of Lord Vetinari's carriage. Carrot glanced around at it. Then he looked at it again, and looked up. There was a glint of metal on the roof of the tower.
Sergeant, who's on the tower?
He said.
Cuddy, sir. Oh, right.
He coughed.
Anyway, Captain, we all clubbed together and... He paused. Acting Constable Cuddy, right? Yeah, he's reliable.
The patrician's carriage was halfway towards Sator Square now. Carrot could see the thin, dark figure in the back seat. He glanced up at the great grey bulk of the tower. Dishes. He glanced up at the great grey bulk of the tower. He started to run.
What's up?
Said Colin. Vimes started to run too. Detritus's knuckles hit the ground as he swung after the others. And then it hit Colin, a sort of frantic tingle, as though someone had blown on his naked brain.
Oh, Shit,
he said, under his breath. These books have been dropping a few more swears recently. Claws scrabbled on the dirt. He drew his sword!
What did you expect? 1 minute the lad is on top of the world. He's got a whole new interest in his life. Something probably even better than going for walks. And then he turns round, and what he sees is, basically, a wolf. You could have hinted. It's that time of the month. That sort of thing. You can't blame him for being surprised, really.
Gaspode got to his feet.
Now, are you going to come on out, or have I got to come in there and be brutally savaged?
Lord Vetinari stood up as he saw the watch running towards him. That was why the first shot went through his thigh instead of his chest. Then Carrot cleared the door of the carriage and flung himself across the man, which is why the next shot went through Carrot. Angua slunk out. Gaspode relaxed slightly. "I can't go back," said Angua. She froze. Her ears twitched.
What? What?
"He's been hurt!" Angua sprang away.
Here! Wait for me!
Barked Gaspode.
That's the shades that way!
A third shot knocked a chip out of Detritus, who slammed into the carriage, knocking it on its side and severing the traces. The horses scrambled away. The coachman had already made a lightning comparison between current job conditions and his rates of pay, and had vanished into the crowd. Vimes slid to a halt behind the overturned carriage. Another shot spranged off the cobbles near his arm.
Detritus? Sir? How are you? Oozing a bit, sir?
A shot hit the carriage wheel above Vimes's head, making it spin.
Carrot!
Right through my shoulder, sir! Vimes eased himself along on his elbows.
Good morning, your lordship,
he said manically. He leaned back and pulled out a mangled cigar.
Got a light?
The patrician opened his eyes. Ah, Captain Vimes. And what happens now? Vimes grinned. Funny, he thought, how I never feel really alive until someone tries to kill me. That's when you notice that the sky is blue. Actually, not very blue right now. There's big clouds up there. But I'm noticing them.
We wait for one more shot,
he said,
and then we run for proper cover.
I appear to be losing a lot of blood, said Lord Vetinari.
Who would have thought you had it in you?
Said Vimes, with the frankness of those probably about to die.
What about you, Carrot?
I can move my hand. Hurts like heck, sir. But you look worse. Vimes looked down. There was blood all over his coat.
A bit of stone must have caught me,
he said.
I didn't even feel it.
He tried to form a mental picture of the Gonne. 6 tubes, all in a line, each one with its lead slug and charge of No. 1 powder, delivered into the Gonne like crossbow bolts. He wondered how long it'd take to put in another 6. But we've got him where we want him. There's only one way down out of the tower. Yep, we might be sitting out here in the open with him shooting lead pellets at us, but we've got him just where we want him. Wheezing and farting nervously, Gaspode moved at a shambling run through the shades, and saw, with a heart that sank even further, a knot of dogs ahead of him. He pushed and squirmed through the tangle of legs. Angua was at bay in a ring of teeth. The barking stopped. A couple of large dogs moved aside, and Big Fido stepped delicately forward. I don't thoroughly remember Big Fido's voice, so...
"So," he said, "what we have here is not a dog at all. A spy, perhaps. There's always an enemy. Everywhere. They look like dogs, but inside they're not dogs. What were you doing?"
Angua growled.
"Oh, lor," thought Gaspode. "She could probably take down a few of them, but these are street dogs."
He wriggled under a couple of bodies and emerged in the circle. Big Fido turned his red-eyed gaze on him.
"And Gaspode, too," said the poodle. "I might have known." "You leave her alone," said Gaspode. "Oh, you'll fight us all for her, will you?" said Big Fido. "I got the power," said Gaspode. "You know that. I'll do it. I'll use it."
"There's no time for this," snarled Angua.
"You won't do it,"
said Big Fido.
"I'll do it." "Every dog's paw'll be turned against you. I got the power, me. You back off, all of you." "What power?" said Butch. He was drooling. "Big Fido knows," said Gaspode. "He's studied. Now, me and her are going to walk out of here all right, nice and slow."
The dogs looked at Big Fido.
"Get them," he said.
Angua bared her teeth. The dogs hesitated.
"A wolf's got a jaw 4 times stronger than any dog," said Gaspode. "And that's just an ordinary wolf." "What are you all?" snapped Big Fido. "You're the pack! No mercy! Get them!"
"But a pack doesn't act like that," Angua had said. "A pack is an association of free individuals. A pack doesn't leap because it's told. A pack leaps because every individual, all at once, decides to leap." A couple of the bigger dogs crouched. Angua moved her head from side to side, waiting for the first assault. A dog scraped the ground with its paw. Gaspode took a deep breath and adjusted his jaw. Dogs leapt.
"Sit!"
said Gaspode. Impassable human. The command bounced back and forth around the alley, and 50% of the animals obeyed. In most cases, it was the hind 50%. Dogs in mid-spring found their treacherous legs coiling under them.
"Bad dog!"
And this was followed by an overpowering sense of racial shame that made them cringe automatically. A bad move in mid-air. Gaspode glanced up at Angua as bewildered dogs reined around them.
"I said I got the power, didn't I?"
he said.
"Now run!"
Dogs are not like cats, who amusingly tolerate humans only until someone comes up with a tin opener that can be operated with a paw. Men made dogs. They took wolves and gave them human things. Unnecessary intelligence, names, a desire to belong, and a twitching inferiority complex. All dogs dream wolf dreams. and know they're dreaming of biting their maker. Every dog knows, deep in his heart, that he is a bad dog. But Big Fido's furious yapping broke the spell. "Get them!" Angua galloped over the cobbles. There was a cart at the other end of the alley, and, beyond the cart, a wall. "Not that way!" whined Gaspode. Dogs were piling along behind them. Angua leapt on to the cart. We're talking subconscious, though. "I can't get up there," said Gaspode. "Not with my leg." Okay. That's true. She jumped down, picked him up by the scruff of his neck, and leapt back. There was a shed roof behind the cart, a ledge above that, and, a few tiles slid under her paws and tumbled into the alley, a house. "I feel sick. Ftupf!" Angua ran along the ridge of the roof and jumped the alley on the other side, landing heavily in some ancient thatch. "Arg! Ftupf!" In case it's not clear, that's shut up, but with a mouthful of dog. But the dogs were following them. It wasn't as though the alleys of the Shades were very wide. Another narrow alley passed below. Gaspode swung perilously from the werewolf's jaws. "They're still behind us!" Gaspode shut his eyes as Angua bunched her muscles. "Oh no! Not Treacle Mine Road!" There was a burst of acceleration, followed by a moment of calmness. Gaspode shut his eyes. Angua landed. Her paws scrabbled on the wet roof for a moment. Slates cascaded off into the street, and then she was bounding up to the ridge. "You can put me down right now," said Gaspode. "Right now, this minute. Here they come." The leading dogs arrived on the opposite roof, saw the gap, and tried to turn. Claws slid on the tiles. Angua turned, fighting for breath. She tried to avoid breathing during that first mad dash. She'd have breathed Gaspode. They heard Big Fido's irate yapping. "Cowards! That's not 20 feet across! That's nothing to a wolf!" The dogs measured the distance doubtfully. Sometimes a dog has to get right down and ask himself, what species am I? "It's easy! I'll show you! Look!" Big Fido ran back a little way, paused, turned, ran, and leapt. There was hardly a curve to the trajectory. The little poodle accelerated out into space, powered less by muscles than by whatever it was that burned in his soul. His forepaws touched the slates, clawed for a moment on the slick surface, and found no hold. In silence, he skidded backwards down the roof, over the edge, and hung. He turned his eyes upwards to the dog that was gripping him. "Gaspode, is that you?" "Yes," said Gaspode, his mouth full. There was hardly any weight to the poodle, but, then, there was hardly any weight to Gaspode. He darted forward and braced his legs to take the strain, but there was nothing much to brace them against. He slid down inexorably until his front legs were in the gutter, which began to creak. Gaspode had an amazingly clear view of the street, 3 stories down. "Oh, hell," said Gaspode. Jaws gripped his tail. "Let him go," said Angua indistinctly. Gaspode tried to shake his head.
Stop struggling,
he said, out of the corner of his mouth.
Brave dog saves the day. Valiant hound in rooftop rescue. No.
The gutter creaked again.
It's going to go, he thought. Story of my life.
Big Fido struggled around.
What are you holding me up by? Your collar,
said Gaspode through his teeth.
What? To hell with that!
The poodle tried to twist, flailing viciously at the air.
Stop it, you daft bugger! You'll have us all off!
Gaspode growled. On the opposite roof, the dog pack watched in horror. The gutter creaked again. Angua's claws scored white lines on the slates. Big Fido wrenched and spun, fighting the grip of the collar, which, finally, snapped. The dog turned in the air, hanging for a moment before gravity took hold.
Free!
And then he fell. Gaspode shot backwards as Angua's paws slipped from under her and landed further up the roof, legs spinning. Both of them made it to the crest and hung there, panting. A Disney villain death? Yeah, very much so. Then Angua bounded away, clearing the next alley before Gaspode had stopped seeing a red mist in front of his eyes. He spat out Big Fido's collar, which slid down the roof and vanished over the edge.
Oh, thank you, he shouted. Thank you very much. Yes, leave me here, that's right. Me with only 3 good legs. Don't you worry about me. If I'm lucky, I'll fall off before I starve. Oh, yes, story of my life. You and me, kid. Together, we could have made it.
He turned and looked at the dogs lining the roofs on the other side of the street.
You lot, go home. Bad dog, he barked.
He slithered down the other side of the roof. There was an alley there, but it was a sheer drop. He crept along the roof to the adjoining building, but there was no way down. There was a balcony a story below, though.
Lateral thinking, he muttered. That's the stuff. Now, a wolf, your basic wolf, he'd jump, and if he couldn't jump, he'd be stuck. Whereas me, on account of superior intelligence, can assess the whole wasp name and arrive at a solution through application of mental processes.
He nudged the gargoyle squatting on the angle of the gutter.
Ont. If you don't help me down to that balcony, I'll whittle in your ear. Big Fido? Yes? Heel.
There were, eventually, 2 theories about the end of Big Fido. The one put forward by the dog Gaspode, based on observational evidence, was that his remains were picked up by foul old Ron and sold within 5 minutes to a furrier, and that Big Fido eventually saw the light of day again as a set of earmuffs and a pair of fleecy gloves. The one believed by every other dog, based on what might tentatively be called the truth of the heart, was that he survived his fall, fled the city, and eventually led a huge pack of mountain wolves who nightly struck terror into isolated farmsteads. It made digging in the middens and hanging around back doors for scraps seem, well, more bearable. They were, after all, only doing it until Big Fido came back. His collar was kept in a secret place and visited regularly by dogs until they forgot about it. All in one sentence. Sergeant Colin pushed open the door with the end of his pike. The tower had floors a long time ago. Now it was hollow all the way up, crisscrossed by golden shafts of light from ancient window embrasures. One of them, filled with glittering motes of dust, lanced down on what, not long before, had been acting Constable Cuddy. Colin gave the body a cautious prod. It didn't move. Nothing looking like that should move. A twisted axe lay beside it. "Oh, no," he breathed. There was a thin rope, the sort the assassins used, hanging down from the heights. It was twitching. Colin looked up at the haze and drew his sword. He could see all the way to the top, and there was no one on the rope. Which meant he didn't even look around, which saved his life. His dive for the floor and the explosion of the gun behind him happened at exactly the same time. He swore afterwards that he felt the wind of the slug as it passed over his head. Then a figure stepped through the smoke and hit him very hard before escaping through the open door into the rain. Sorry.
Acting Constable Cuddy.
Cuddy brushed himself off. "Oh," he said. "I see. I didn't think I was going to survive that. Not after the first 100 feet.
You were correct."
The unreal world of the living was already fading, but Cuddy glared at the twisted remains of his axe. It seemed to worry him far more than the twisted remains of Cuddy. "And will you look at that?" he said. "My dad made that axe for me. A fine weapon to take into the afterlife, I don't think."
Is that some kind of burial custom?
"Don't you know? You are Death, aren't you?"
That doesn't mean I have to know about burial customs. Generally, I meet people before they're buried. The ones I meet after they've been buried tend to be a bit overexcited and disinclined to discuss things."
Cuddy folded his arms. "If I'm not going to be properly buried," he said, "I ain't going. My tortured soul will walk the world in torment." I feel like I'm getting the voice a little wrong because I'm a little plugged up.
It doesn't have to.
"It can if it wants to," snapped the ghost of Cuddy.
Detritus, you haven't got time to ooze. Get over to the tower. Take some people with you."
Vimes reached the doorway of the great hall, with a patrician over his shoulder, and Carrot stumbling along behind him. The wizards were clustered around the door. Big, heavy drops of rain were beginning to fall, hissing on the hot stones. Ridcully rolled up his sleeves.
"Hell's bells! What did that to his leg?" "That's the Gonne for you. Sort him out. And Corporal Carrot, too."
"There's no need," said Vetinari, trying to smile and stand up. "It's just a flesh." The leg collapsed under him. Vimes blinked. He'd never expected this. The patrician was the man who always had the answers, who was never surprised. Vimes had a sense that history was flapping loose.
"We can handle it, sir," said Carrot. "I've got men on the roofs, and—" "Shut up! Stay here! That's an order!"
Vimes fumbled in his pouch and hung his badge on his torn jacket.
"Hey, you! Pajama! I need a sword!"
Pajama looked sullen.
"I only take orders from Corporal Carrot." "Give me a sword right now, you horrible little man!" "Right. Thank you. Now let's get to the tow."
A shadow appeared in the doorway. Detritus walked in. They looked at the limp shape in his hands. He laid it carefully on a bench, without saying a word, and went and sat in a corner. While the others gathered round the mortal remains of acting Constable Cuddy, the troll removed his homemade cooling helmet and sat staring at it, turning it over and over in his hands.
"He was on the floor,"
said Sergeant Colin, leaning against the doorframe.
"He must have been pushed off the stairs right at the top. Someone else was in there, too. Must have shinnied down a rope and caught me a right bang on the side of the head." "Being pushed down the tower is not worth it for a shilling," said Carrot vaguely.
It was better when the dragon came, thought Vimes. After it had killed someone, it was at least still a dragon. It went somewhere else, but you could say, "That's a dragon, that is." It couldn't nip over a wall and become just another person. You always knew what you were fighting. You didn't have to. "What's that in Cuddy's hand?" he said. He realized he'd been staring at it without seeing it for some time. He tugged at it. It was a strip of black cloth. "Assassins wear that," said Colin blankly. "So do lots of other people," said Ridcully. "Black's black." "You're right," said Vimes. "Taking any action on the basis of this would be premature. You know, it'd probably get me fired." He waved the cloth in front of Lord Vetinari. "Assassins everywhere," he said. "On guard. Seems they didn't notice anything, eh? You gave them the bloody Gonne because you thought they were the best to guard it. You never thought of giving it to the guards." "Aren't we going to give chase, Corporal Carrot?" said Pajama. "Chase who? Chase where?" said Vimes. "He hit old Fred on the head and did a runner. He could trot around a corner, chuck the Gonne over a wall, and who'd know? We don't know who we're looking for." "I do," said Carrot. He stood up, holding his shoulder. "It's easy to run," he said. "We've done a lot of running. But that's not how you hunt. You hunt by sitting still in the right place. Captain, I want the sergeant to go out there and tell people we've got the killer." "What?" "His name is Edward Death. Say we've got him in custody. Say he was caught and badly injured, but he's alive." "But we haven't." "He's an assassin." "We haven't." "Yes, Captain. I don't like telling lies. But it might be worth it. Anyway, it's not your problem, sir." "It isn't. Why not?" "You're retiring in less than an hour." "I'm still captain right now, Corporal. So you have to tell me what's going on. That's how things work." "We haven't got time, sir. Do it, Sergeant Colin." "Carrot, I still run the watch. I'm the one who's supposed to give the orders." Carrot hung his head.
Sorry, Captain. Right, so long as that's understood. Sergeant Colin, sir, put out the news that we've arrested Edward Death, whoever he is. Yes, sir. And your next move, Mr. Carrot, said Vimes.
Carrot looked at the assembled wizards.
Excuse me, sir. Ook. First, we need to get into the library. First, said Vimes, someone can lend me a helmet. I don't feel I'm at work without a helmet. Thanks, Fred. Right. Helmet, sword, badge. Now!
There was sound under the city. It filtered down by all sorts of routes, but it was indistinct, a hive noise. And there was the faintest of glows. The waters of the Ankh, to use the element in its broadest sense, had washed, to bend the definition to its limit, these tunnels for centuries. Now there was an extra sound. Footsteps padded over the silt, barely perceptible unless ears had become accustomed to the background noise, and an indistinct shape moved through the gloom, pausing at a circle of darkness leading to a smaller tunnel.
"How do you feel, your lordship?"
said Corporal Nobbs, the upwardly mobile. Who are you?
"Corporal Nobbs, sir,"
said Nobby, saluting. Do we employ you?
"Yes, sir."
Ah, you're the dwarf, are you?
"No, sir. That was the late Cuddy, sir. I'm one of the human beings, sir."
You're not employed as the result of any special hiring procedures?
"No, sir,"
said Nobby proudly. My word, said the patrician. He was feeling a little light-headed from loss of blood. The Arch-Chancellor had also given him a long drink of something he said was a marvelous remedy, although he'd been unspecific as to what it cured. Verticality, apparently. It was wise to remain sitting upright, though. It was a good idea to be seen to be alive. A lot of inquisitive people were peering around the door. It was important to ensure that rumors of his death were greatly exaggerated. Corporal self-proclaimed human Nobbs and some other guards had closed in around the patrician, on Captain Vimes's orders. Some of them were a lot bulkier than he rather muzzily remembered. You there, my man, have you taken the king's shilling? He inquired of one.
I never took nothing.
Capital. Well done. And then the crowds scattered. Something golden and vaguely dog-like burst through, growling, its nose close to the ground, and was gone again, covering the ground to the library in long, easy strides. The patrician was aware of conversation.
"Fred,
Yes, Nobby?
did that look a bit familiar to you?"
I know what you mean.
Nobby fidgeted awkwardly.
"You should have bawled her out for not being in uniform,"
he said.
Bit tricky, that.
"If I'd run through here without me clothes on, you'd fine me $50 for being improperly dressed."
Here's $50, Nobby. Now shut up.
Lord Vetinari beamed at them. Then there was the guard in the corner. Another of the big lumpy ones.
"Still all right, your lordship?"
said Nobby. Who's that gentleman? He followed the patrician's gaze.
"That's Detritus the Troll, sir."
Why is he sitting like that?
He's thinking, sir.
He hasn't moved for some time.
He thinks slow, sir.
Detritus stood up. There was something about the way he did it, some hint of a mighty continent beginning a tectonic movement that would end in the fearsome creation of some unscalable mountain range, which made people stop and look. Not one of the watchers was familiar with the experience of watching mountain building, but now they had some vague idea of what it was like. It was like Detritus standing up, with Cuddy's twisted axe in his hand.
But deep, sometimes,
said Nobby, eyeing various possible escape routes. The trolls stared at the crowd as if wondering what they were doing there. Then, arms swinging, he began to walk forward.
Acting Constable Detritus, as you were,
Colin ventured. Detritus ignored him. He was moving quite fast now, in the deceptive way that lava does. He reached the wall and punched it out of the way.
Has anyone been giving him sulphur?
Said Nobby. Colin looked around at the guard.
Lance Constable Bauxite, Lance Constable Coalface, apprehend Acting Constable Detritus.
The two trolls looked first at the retreating form of Detritus, then at one another, and finally at Sergeant Colin. Bauxite managed a salute.
Permission for leave to attend grandmother's funeral, sir?
Why?
It her or me, Sarge. We get our Guhulug heads kicked in,
said Coalface, the less circuitous thinker. A match flared. In the sewers, its light was like a nova. Vimes lit first his cigar, and then a lamp.
Dr. Cruces,
he said. The chief of assassins froze.
Corporal Carrot here has a crossbow, too,
he said.
I'm not sure if he'd use it. He's a good man. He thinks everyone else is a good man. I'm not. I'm mean, nasty, and tired. And now, Doctor, you've had time to think. You're an intelligent man. What were you doing down here, please? It can't be to look for the mortal remains of young Edward, because our Corporal Nobbs has taken him off to the Watch morgue this morning, probably nicking any small items of personal jewelry he had on him. But that's just Nobby's way. He's got a criminal mind, has our Nobby. But I'll say this for him. He hasn't got a criminal soul. I hope he's cleaned the clown makeup off the poor chap. Dear me. You used him, didn't you? He killed poor old Beano, and then he got the gun, and he was there when it killed Hammerhawk. He even left a bit of his Beano wig in the timbers. And just when he could have done with some good advice, such as to turn himself in, you killed him. The point, the interesting point, is that young Edward couldn't have been the man on the tower a little while ago. Not with the stab wound in his heart and everything. I know that being dead isn't always a barrier to quiet enjoyment in this city, but I don't think young Edward has been up and about much. The piece of cloth was a nice touch. But, you know, I've never believed in that stuff. Footprints in the flower bed, telltale buttons, stuff like that. People think that stuff's policing. It's not. Policing's luck and slog most of the time. But lots of people would believe it. I mean, he's been dead. What? Not 2 days. And it's nice and cool down here. You could haul him up. I dare say you could fool people who didn't look too close once he was on a slab. And you'd have got the man who shot the patrician. Mind you, half the city would be fighting the other half by then, I dare say. Some more deaths would be involved. I wonder if you'd care. He paused. You still haven't said anything. You have no understanding, said Cruces. Yes? Death was right. He was mad, but he was right. About what, Dr. Cruces? Said Vimes. And then the assassin was gone, diving into a shadow. Oh, no, said Vimes. A whisper echoed around the man-made cavern. Captain Vimes, one thing a good assassin learns is... There was a thunderous explosion, and the lamp disintegrated. Never stand near the light. Vimes hit the floor and rolled. Another shot hit a foot away, and he felt the splash of cold water. There was water under him, too. The Ankh was rising, and, in accordance with laws older than those of the city, the water was finding its way back up the tunnels. Garrett, Vimes whispered. Yes? The voice came from somewhere in the pitch blackness to his right. I can't see a thing. I lost my night vision lighting that damn lamp. I can feel water coming in. Vimes began, and stopped as he formed a mental picture of the hidden Cruces aiming at a patch of sound. I should have shot him first, he thought. He's an assassin. He had to raise himself slightly to keep his face out of the rising water. Then he heard a gentle splashing. Cruces was walking towards them. There was a scratching noise, and then light. Cruces had lit a torch, and Vimes looked up to see the skinny shape in the glow. His other hand was steadying the gun. Something Vimes had learned as a young guard drifted up from memory. If you have to look along the shaft of an arrow from the wrong end, if a man has you entirely at his mercy, then hope like hell that man is an evil man. Because the evil like power over people, and they want to see you in fear. They want to know. They want you to know you're going to die. So they'll talk. They'll gloat. They'll watch you squirm. They'll put off the moment of murder like another man will put off a good cigar. So hope like hell your captor is an evil man. A good man will kill you with hardly a word. Then, to his everlasting horror, he heard Carrot stand up. Dr. Cruces, I arrest you for the murder of Bjorn Hammerhawk, Edward Deeth, Beano the Clown, Lettuce Nibs, and Acting Constable Cuddy of the City Watch. Dear me, all those? I'm afraid Edward killed Brother Beano. That was his own idea, the little fool. He said he hadn't meant to. And I understand that Hammerhawk was killed accidentally. A freak accident. He poked around and the charge fired and the slug bounced off his anvil and killed him. That's what Edward said. He came to see me afterwards. He was very upset.
Made a clean breast of the whole thing, you know. So I killed him. Well, what else could I do? He was quite mad. There's no dealing with that sort of person. May I suggest you step back, sire? I'd prefer not to shoot you. No, not unless I have to. It seemed to Vimes that Cruces was arguing with himself. The Gonne swung violently. He was babbling, said Cruces. He said the Gonne killed Hammerhawk. I said, it was an accident? And he said, no, no accident. The Gonne killed Hammerhawk. Carrot took another step forward. Cruces seemed to be in his own world now. No, the Gonne killed the beggar girl, too. It wasn't me. Why should I do a thing like that? Cruces took a step back, but the Gonne swung up towards Carrot. It looked to Vimes as though it moved of its own accord, like an animal sniffing the air. Get down, Vimes hissed. He reached out and tried to find his crossbow. He said the Gonne was jealous. Hammerhawk would have made more guns. Stop where you are! Carrot took another step. I had to kill Edward. He was a romantic. He would have got it wrong. But Ankh Morpork needs a king. The gun jerked and fired at the same moment as Carrot leapt sideways. I think that's the first time it's actually said gun in this book. I wonder if that's a mistake or if that's intentional. I can't imagine it's a mistake. I think, as far as I've noticed, every other time it's been spelled Gonne. But this time it says the gun, Gun, jerked. Unless I've missed it somewhere else, which is possible. But it stood out to me this time. The tunnels were brilliant with smells. Where are we at? Let's see. It's 8:27. We are on page 351 out of 380. So that's still another 30 pages. Now, 30 pages in this book is not as long as it is in some other books, but we could stop here, finish next Wednesday, and then figure out what we're going to read next if we've still got spare time. What do people think? Or should we keep going? I am up for either one. Still quite a lot. Yeah, I think this is probably a good place to stop for tonight. Well, not a bit of happy writing, huh? I managed to avoid breaking up too much there. I don't mind saying I'm still sensitive to that kind of stuff. This year's been rough. And Cuddy's such a great character. And then you add on top of that Detritus being sad. Ugh. Things got tense. Yeah, we've been watching Andor, which is on Disney, which is sort of like a spy thriller series set in like Star Wars universe around the founding of the rebellion. And it is not a happy series. It is. It's very good, but it's very tense. And I would say probably I would consider it more adult than probably any other Star Wars content I've watched. not like I will try to. I won't say anything specific, spoilers and such. That's just the premise. But yeah, it's had a lot of heavy subject matter. Um, a lot of characters that are awful people. Um, so yeah, it's very like it's not people waving around laser swords, things like that. It's quite serious. But so far it has been very well done, very well written, very well acted. Um, a character portrayed by an actor that I will not spoil has been in the past few episodes that's been very well done. So, yeah, it's really good, but it's heavy. Hmm. We haven't watched all of Clone Wars. We're a few seasons into it, but it's been a while since we've watched any of that. Um, but yeah, that can I mean, what I've heard of the later seasons of it is that it's very very good, and it's been pretty good so far from what we have seen. But I don't think that we've oof, I see. Yeah, this I don't know if you want excuse me if you want trigger warnings for Andor or not, but yeah, it's got some heavy stuff in it. But hopefully you don't let that dissuade you because as also mentioned it's been very good, and it's really interesting to see like I've been noticing this with like some of the Marvel stuff is that they've been kind of branching Marvel into different genres. Um, and this feels like a different genre of Star Wars to me. Like it is. Star Wars you'll keep up with. Um, this feels, yeah, a bit more like it's aimed at an adult audience. Um, there's even been a swear word. I don't know if there's been an English like English language swear word in Star Wars before. You know, it wasn't some CG alien yelling "poodoo." Yeah, there's been some pretty grim stuff. McClunk. I forgot one. McClunky. Is it McClunky? Oh boy. Okay. Well, I don't see anyone else streaming tonight, which is a little weird. It is now the foremost channel. Uh, I'm looking forward to tomorrow. I'm going to pick up some more of the Warhammer stuff I've been painting. The space dwarf army I've been painting, so be picking up a big old tank and a couple of little ATV transport types things and a bunch of unique units of models. So tomorrow's going to be another painting day. That'll be fun. Someone's doing something outside and Ben heard it. Alright, well, hopefully everyone has a nice weekend. Try and stay dry as much as you can. Yeah. And, yeah. I should be back here next Wednesday. So have a good weekend. Alright. See you next week, everyone. Bye-bye.